Australia has about 24 million beef cattle, and of this number, close to 500,000 are owned by the AACO. AACO is Australia's biggest exporter of live trade, so the suspension of the trade to Indonesia has obviously had a massive impact. David Farley is AACO's CEO. He spoke to me from Darwin, and my first question was, is AACO ready to go with exports now the suspension has been lifted?
Yeah, we're positioned ourselves with livestock ready to roll. We've had to reposition other numbers and face them south instead of facing them north. But once the government gives us a direction, once we can get our logistics chains mobilised again, we'll be ready to export, yes.
You've got a lot of fat cattle in the north. How have you been managing them?
Well, that's what we're about. We've got a skilled management team. We've had to address this immediately. We've had to redirect cattle, reposition cattle. We're making decisions not only for today, but for the next season, in effect. It's been expensive, but the reality is we've had to react. We've got animal welfare issues to manage ourselves on our properties, and we had no choice. We had to react and reposition cattle.
You got 50,000 head or so from the Tipperary deal. Did you have to send some of them south for either fattening or processing?
Yeah, we've had to reposition breeders, cows that are ready to calf. The reality was that once this stopped, we had a program that was ongoing. Once it stopped, we've had to react for it and literally prepare for the worst, which we've been able to do. We've repositioned a lot of cattle now, but the unfortunate part, you reposition it at a high cost.
David Farley, I get the impression this trade is not going to resume instantly. In fact, I assume from information I've received that it's going to happen very, very slowly.
I think we're going to get resolution, but we've got to be very, very careful that even though the trade may open again, it will be a trickle trade. It won't be a flowing trade. We as pastoralists are, in the north, handling our assets are living, breathing assets. Our assets actually produce calves. We've got to make sure we've got the right feed, water, and we've got them all positioned. Just because the ban has been lifted isn't business as usual. There's still a long, long way to go to get our viability back into the north.
I think that's a rather universal view through the industry, Mr. Farley. A couple of other questions on a subject of still of great interest to most beef producers, especially across the north. Has this suspension of the trade impacted on your plans to build an abattoir in the north?
No. Our abattoir in the north is designed around the redundant cows, the cows that have reached the end of their breeding life, and the redundant bulls that are there. The whole purpose of the abattoirs is to improve the commercial value of them, and then lift the productivity out of the existing herd. By taking the older cows out, we should be able to lift our calving percentages and our branding percentages right across the Barkly and right through the Kimberleys.
So those cows are over 350 kgs, and the big Mickey bulls, that's what you're looking forward to taking.
That's right. And those cattle at the moment have got a high cost of logistics to get them down into the southern markets. They've got anywhere from 4 to 6 days of transporting, high cost, great body shrinkage on them. And this way, if we set the herd up in the north, especially with this new facility, not only will we improve the economics of it, but we'll actually improve overall productivity from the pastoral base in the north.
Now, with the abattoir, have you actually broken ground yet? And what's the time frame for the abattoir?
No, look, we haven't actually broken ground, but we've definitely, the process of getting the abattoir approved, both in the Northern Territory and in the small communities that we're operating in. We've gone a long way with engineering, we've gone a long way with building and employing the team that not only build it, but run it, and a long way with negotiating with government on the common use infrastructure assets that are required for it.
David Farley, I know you've been very, very busy today, and I appreciate your time on Landline.
Thanks very much.
There's no doubt the performance of the two big public companies involved in the live trade, AACO and Elders, will be scrutinised very closely over coming months. Also under the microscope, that abattoir plan for Darwin. Despite what David Farley says, and despite a lot of goodwill about the project, there remains a mountain of scepticism over its future. Only time will tell. Moving now to the sale yards, where cattle throughput has slowed in all states as producers look at the low prices and check how much grass they have, and many decide to hang on for a while at least. Prices have been so-so. I've noticed Queensland throughput in June down 24% on last year. The issue remains tough export conditions. The dollar is making it very hard at the quality end in Japan and even in the American hamburger market. This left the Eastern Young Cattle Indicator at $3.75, a loss of 3 cents for the week. Midwinter conditions for sheep meat and lamb producers are about opposite to this time last year. Numbers are down and prices are soft, although last week saw the first upside for several weeks. Again, a major influence is the dollar. Exporters are reporting a backlog of supplies and fewer orders than 2010. That mutton price is more about supply than demand. And again, it's worth noting these prices remain excellent in historical terms. Now to a live trade quote, and I can tell you there was no business for Indonesian cattle last week. A boat went to the Philippines carrying steers at $1.45 and a boat is headed to Brunei this coming week with steers at $1.40 and cows at $1. Those quotes are about 30 to 50% below prices pre the trade suspension. Turning now to grains, where markets have been positive overseas and soft here at home. Soybeans, wheat and corn all lifted. Egypt, the world's biggest wheat importer, is buying a lot of Russian wheat. America sold 540,000 tonnes of corn to China, but overall the market remains edgy. And in other grain news of interest, France has announced its wheat crop this year, 32 million tonnes, about 10% down on last year. ASX futures are soft at present. Milling wheat on the East Coast shed $15 on the week, while wheat in WA for January delivery dumped $14. Local Olcott prices mirrored the futures. Wheat and sorghum fell and canola followed Winnipeg. There's lots of market chatter about how much our dollar is hurting wheat exporters. And the golden run of cotton looks like ending soon. Lots of contract cancellations are signalling weak global demand, and any more bad news from the USDA this coming week will see a further price slip. Cotton has gone from a high of well over $2 a pound last March to around $1.16 at present, a fall of more than 7 cents in just 1 week. And the big market surprise at the moment is sugar. A hint of a production downgrade in Brazil has led to a price surge to its highest point since last March. So sugar for October delivery is now above 29 cents a pound, a lift on the week of more than 3 cents. Now to wool, where there's been another correction to the bull run. More on the markets in a moment, but first, let's hear from Dr. Paul Swan. He's head of the Market Research and Intelligence Department at Australian Wool Innovation. I put a series of questions to Dr. Swan about the wool market, the first of which was why the extraordinary price spike for wool over the past year was not forecast. So let's look at the fundamentals, Dr. Swan. Prices and markets can be tricky, of course, but this price spike seems to be built on fundamentals, the law of supply and demand. Is that how you see it?
Look, there's no doubt that the key factors here are there's a very tight global supply. Sheep numbers are very low globally. Against that, you've got the emergence of China as a massive consumer market. We've had a couple of cold winters in the Northern Hemisphere. You've also had the long coming consumer shift towards things green and natural, and that affects natural fibres like ours and food choices as well. So there's a number of factors at play here, but the primary ones are demand side, as you suggest, and also a tight supply.
So let's look at the buyers. China, obviously, and good support from Europe, but there's an interesting trend I see from India as well.
Yeah, look, India is becoming more and more important to this industry, both as a processing hub, and the Indian government's been investing in this for some time, but also as a consumer domestic market. We all know them to have a very large population, but they have a very rapidly increasing population of by Western standards, the middle class. I think it increases by about the size of the Australian population every year. They've got a lot of wealthy people in India as well. It's a very powerful economy. It's growing in importance and certainly growing in importance to our industry. And that's fundamentally a great positive.
And the microns, I noticed the middle microns did well for quite a while, and then the finer microns. Where's the market heading?
It's very, very dangerous for people to try and predict the price of wool into the future, Kerry, which I'm sure you'd appreciate. Our own view is that if you start with the supply side of things, This year, we're forecasting an increase in the supply of wool of about 5 million kilos from the total for this year. But the distribution of diameter has changed. The production of wool finer than 19.5 micron will again be tight for this coming year. The supply in the mid-microns and the coarser microns will again be up. It was increased this year on the back of such a huge season. So there will be, I guess, moving forward, again, tight supply, a slight increase in the numbers of sheep. Again, a tight supply of fine wool, which we should expect to be seen in the price support for very fine wool, and increased production again in the middle and strong micron bands, which again we should start to see reflected in the price for those.
Finally, Dr. Swan, there's an old saying about markets about what goes up must come down. How about an assessment for the coming season? Where is the market headed?
Kerry, our view is that the prices that we are experiencing represent more or less a new level moving forward, based on the fact that supply is tight and supply will take years to increase, particularly against the backdrop of a very strong meat price. So you must remember, in a production sense, growers there's competing forces in the sense of the very strong meat price, which makes people want to sell sheep for the meat market, and a very strong wool price, which makes people want to retain sheep. So those two factors, when they balance, our view, and shared by MLA, is that sheep numbers will increase slowly moving forward. And so whilst the demand fundamentals are in place, it promises to be a very positive period, a longer-term strong period, with volatility, of course, but a very strong period.
Dr. Swan, thanks very much for your time. Now, as mentioned, the wool price had a bit of a hiccup last week. There's been a change in the way the indicator is calculated. That caused part of the blip, but the chief reason for the fall was news of a massive lift in bales on offer next week, up about 50% on the same week last year to near 60,000 bales. So the indicator dropped 2.9% to close the week at 1,359 cents. And that's the Landline check on prices.